Hey YouTube, how's it going? Dustin Smith here with A2K, Allegiance to the King, and today we're going to be looking at God and Jesus, and specifically one of the differences between God and Jesus, and that is the subject of temptation, okay? What we're going to see today is that God cannot be tempted, but Jesus is described in the Bible as having been tempted multiple times, okay? And that seems to be a very clear difference between the two. God and Jesus, as you're probably aware, get confused a lot in some versions of Christian theology, maybe some versions of Christian theology that could use a better look at the Bible. And so we're going to help you today as our viewer to distinguish God and Jesus, specifically on the subject of temptation. Let's begin our study in the book of James, James chapter 1 and verse 13, where it says, "Let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted by evil." Okay, that's James 1:13. What we see there is that God cannot be tempted by evil. God is unable to be tempted by evil. God can't be tempted. All right, that's clear. So God can't be tempted, but what we're going to see in a variety of passages is that Jesus Christ was tempted, okay? Now, Jesus didn't succumb to that temptation in leading to disobedience or to sin, but Jesus himself was tempted. And what we're going to see is that he was tempted in all things as Christians were, but Jesus did not sin, okay? So we can look in the Gospels, we can look in Matthew and Luke and see that Jesus was tempted in Matthew chapter 4 and in Luke chapter 4. This account appears. We're just going to look in Matthew's version. Matthew chapter 4 and verse 1. "Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he then became hungry, and the tempter came and said to him, 'If you are the Son of God, command that these stones become bread.' And he answered and said, 'It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God.'" And the passage goes on and it gives two more temptations that the devil, the tempter, Satan, gives to Jesus, okay? So clearly there, Matthew wants you to walk away from this passage and understand that Jesus was tempted, but he came out on the other end of temptation in the correct way, in the obedient way, in the faithful way, by citing Scripture and always being obedient to God. But he was tempted by the tempter, okay? We can also see this in the book of Hebrews, Hebrews chapter 2. Let's look in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 18, where it says, in describing Jesus, "For since he himself was tempted in that which he suffered, he is able to come to the aid of those who are tempted." Okay? So Jesus, he himself, Jesus in his totality, was tempted in the things that he suffered, and because he was authentically and truly tempted, he's able to help those as the high priest who are also tempted, okay? Jesus can understand and he can empathize with our temptations. The book of Hebrews continues in this. Look in Hebrews chapter 4 and verse 15, where it says, "We do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin." Again, there, Jesus was tempted in all the things that Christians are tempted in, but Jesus was without sin, okay? So what we've seen there, in conclusion, is that James 1:13 says that God cannot be tempted by evil, but we've also seen that Jesus was clearly tempted in Matthew chapter 4, Hebrews chapter 2, and in Hebrews chapter 4. That's a very clear and undeniable distinction between God and Jesus. God and Jesus should not be confused because of at least this reason. God can't be tempted by evil, but Jesus himself was tempted by evil. And that's a clear way to distinguish God and Jesus that you can show your friends in just 4 passages very simply within the course of 10 minutes, okay? Be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more videos on biblical Unitarian theology. My name is Dustin Smith. I'm with A2K, Allegiance to the King. And until next time, take care.